The importance of early diagnosis and intervention of early onset bipolar disorder. A review of bipolar disorder in children and what educators can do to help, by Stephen Perez of Azusa Pacific University. Bipolar disorder is a brain disorder that affects children, adolescents, and adults. The disorder causes change in behavior that is outside the scope of normal behaviors. Individuals with bipolar disorder can transition from depressive to manic states. When bipolar disorder is diagnosed before the age of 13, it is known as early onset bipolar disorder. Bipolar disorder is diagnosed by the Diagnostic Statistical Manual. Bipolar disorder is broken into 3 categories. Bipolar I disorder is characterized by manic or mixed episodes that last at least 7 days, accompanied by depressive states that last at least 2 weeks. Bipolar II disorder is diagnosed when individuals experience depressive states lasting at least 2 weeks and enter stages of hypomanic but not full-blown manic episodes. Not otherwise specified bipolar disorder is diagnosed when an individual shows behaviors outside the normal scope of behaviors but do not meet the diagnostic requirements for bipolar disorder 1 or 2. Early onset bipolar disorder is relatively rare, occurring in less than 2% of all children. However, early onset bipolar disorder is on the rise. According to a study by Dr. Mark Olfson in 2007, the New York State Psychiatric Institute at Columbia University found that diagnosis of bipolar disorder rose by a rate of 4,000% from 1994 to 2003. With diagnoses on the rise, it is important for educators to be aware of and recognize some of the symptoms and behaviors of children with early onset bipolar disorder. Manic symptoms manifest themselves in many different ways. Euphoria is defined as elevated, too happy, silly, giddy, or being expansive about everything. An example would be a child who laughs hysterically for 30 minutes after a mildly funny comment by a peer and despite other students staring at him. Irritability, energized, angry, raging, or intensely irritable mood. They may have inappropriate reactions to external events for an extended period of time. An example would be, in reaction to meeting a substitute teacher, a child flies into a violent 20-minute rage. Inflated self-esteem or grandiosity. Believing, talking, or acting as if he is considerably better at something or has special powers or abilities, despite clear evidence to the contrary. A child believes and tells others she is able to fly from the top of the school building. Decreased need for sleep. Unable to fall or stay asleep, or waking up too early because of increased energy, leading to a significant reduction in sleep, yet feeling well rested. Despite only sleeping 3 hours the night before, a child is still energized throughout the day. Increased speech. Dramatically amplified volume, uninterruptible rate, or pressure to keep talking. Example, a child suddenly begins to talk extremely loudly, more rapidly, and cannot be interrupted by the teacher. Flight of ideas or racing thoughts. Report or observation via speech or writing, or speeded up tangential or circumstantial thoughts. A teacher cannot follow a child's rambling speech that is outside the character of the child. The speech is not related to any cognitive or language impairment the child might have. Distractibility. Increased inattentiveness beyond a child's baseline attentional capacity. A child is distracted by sounds in the hallway which would typically not bother her. Increase in goal-directed activity or psychomotor agitation. A child starts to rearrange the school library, clean everyone's desks, or plans to build an elaborate fort in the playground, but never finishes any of these projects. They may become hyper-focused on making friends, engaging in multiple school projects or hobbies, or in sexual encounters. Excessive involvement in pleasurable or dangerous activities. Sudden, unrestrained participation in an action that is likely to lead to painful or very negative consequences. Depressive symptoms in children. Depressed mood. Feels or looks sad or irritable. An example, a child appears down or flat or is cranky or grouchy in class and on the playground. Markedly diminished interest or pleasure in all activities. Complains of feeling bored or finding nothing fun anymore. A child reports feeling empty or bored and shows no interest in previously enjoyable school or peer activities. Significant weight loss or gain, or an appetite increase or decrease. A weight change of more than 5% in 1 month, or significant change in appetite. A child looks much thinner and drawn, or a great deal heavier, or has no appetite or an excessive appetite at lunchtime. Insomnia or hypersomnia. Difficulty falling asleep, staying asleep, waking up too early, or sleeping longer and still feeling tired. A child looks worn out, is often groggy or tardy, or reports sleeping through alarm, despite getting 12 hours of sleep. Psychomotor agitation. Looks restless or slowed down. A child is extremely fidgety or can't stay seated. His speech or movement is sluggish, or he avoids physical activities. Fatigue or loss of energy. Complains of feeling tired all the time. Child looks or complains of constantly feeling tired even with adequate sleep. Low self-esteem, feelings of worthlessness or excessive guilt. Thinking and saying more negative than positive things about oneself, or feeling extremely bad about things one has done or not done. Example, a child frequently tells herself or others, "I'm no good," or "I hate myself." She feels bad about and dwells on accidentally bumping into someone in the corridor, or having not said hello to a friend. Recurrent thoughts of death or suicidality. Obsession with morbid thoughts or events or suicidal ideation. Planning or attempts to kill oneself. Example, a child talks or draws pictures about death, war casualties, natural disasters, or famine. He reports wanting to be dead, not wanting to live anymore, wishing he'd never been born. He draws pictures of someone shooting or stabbing him, writes a suicide note, gives possessions away, or tries to kill himself. Children who suffer from bipolar disorder experience more sporadic and intense changes in behavior compared to adults with the disorder. Individuals with early onset bipolar disorder also experience greater frequency and severity of symptoms into adulthood. Children with early onset bipolar disorder are also at greater risk for comorbid disorders such as ADD, ADHD, drug and alcohol dependency, and anxiety disorders. ADHD is also a common misdiagnosis for children with early onset bipolar disorder because of their similar symptoms. In a study from Lofthouse and Friestad, they found that nearly 50% of 272 individuals with early onset bipolar disorder attempted suicide at some point in their life. 77 of the 272 individuals also reported being involved in violent incidents. The study also shows that individuals with early onset bipolar disorder experience higher levels of syndromal, depressive, and mixed symptoms than those diagnosed in adolescence or adulthood. 49% of early onset patients reported syndromal behavior in adulthood, compared to only 31% of adult diagnosis. 27.7% of early onset bipolar disorder patients reported issues of depression in adulthood, while those whose first symptoms appeared in adulthood were at only 22.3%. The statistics repeated themselves, with nearly 16% reporting mixed episodes, while only 4% of adult diagnosed patients experienced mixed stages. The length of time in stages is also longer for individuals who were diagnosed in childhood. Early onset adults spent 43% of their days depressed, compared to only 38% of adult diagnosed bipolar patients. Early onset diagnosed patients are also experience greater rates of elevated moods, anxious feelings, and irritable moods than those diagnosed in adulthood. The early onset patients in the study all reported a significant delay in intervention from their signs of first symptoms to the signs of intervention. While the research is sparse, Dr. Robert M. Post found similar results to those of Lofthouse and Friestad. The behaviors and symptoms were more pronounced in those recognized as having early onset versus those with an adult diagnosis. Dr. Post stated, "It is likely that the long delay to first treatment that were apparent from our study a generation ago may in fact be becoming attenuated. It is hoped that appropriate early intervention would result in a more benign illness and a better prognosis in adulthood. Proper intervention includes a mix of psychotherapy and psychopharmacology. Once the patient's mood is stabilized, other behaviors can be treated with drugs as well. After the behaviors have been addressed, social skills and training can be used to help the patient advance." Bipolar disorder has great implication for educators as well. Children with bipolar disorder show extremely low graduation rates, with less than 40% of students with bipolar disorder finishing high school. Bipolar students also show low self-esteem and are prone to isolation, suicidal ideation, and a lack of involvement. These students also have a difficult time focusing and staying motivated and do not deal well with changes or transition. Educators need to be prepared to recognize and offer services to these students. While school counselors and psychologists cannot diagnose, they can use assessments and diagnostic tools to determine the services necessary for these students. School psychologists can use social-emotional functioning assessments such as the Behavior Assessment System for Children, known as the BASC, the Devereux Scales of Mental Disorders, and the Beck Depression Inventory. Cognitive assessments such as the Wechsler Intelligence Scale for children may also be beneficial. Psychological processing areas can be tested by using tests of auditory processing and motor-free visual perception tests. Executive functions can be monitored as well by using the Behavior Rating Inventory of Executive Functions and the Wisconsin Card Sorting Test. After testing, placement can be determined. Those who qualify for special education can receive an IEP under the category of Other Health Impaired, Emotionally Disturbed, or Specific Learning Disability. Other students may need a new behavior support plan to help determine a consistent response to issues. For those who do not qualify for special education, a 504 plan may be implemented to provide accommodations. School sites need to have a plan when working with students with bipolar disorder. A support team should be created to respond to crisis or difficult circumstances. Scheduling and predictability also need to be incorporated. Consistency and structure can help prevent issues of tension and uncertainty. A quiet room or safe room can also help protect the student during times when they are emotionally unstable. A quiet room can provide a safe place for a student to de-escalate without other students taking notice. Schools also need to determine services that need to be provided for students, such as social skills groups and counseling services. In my personal experience in working with children with bipolar disorder, it is important to be flexible and patient. In an observation of a student with bipolar disorder, I saw a pattern of frustration during time math facts quizzes. The student would become agitated as his peers finished before him, causing him to get distracted and not finish in the allotted time frame. The frustration created irritability, and the student was not focused on the next assignment. To accommodate this behavior, the student was given the math fact quizzes in a separate room without a visible timer. The student began to finish the quizzes on time, and his scores improved as a result. Educators must continue to adapt to our increasingly diversified population, and that includes students with psychological conditions. By recognizing, intervening, and supporting students with bipolar disorder, educators can not only make an impact in the students' life while at school, but set them on course for a more stable and maintainable adult life.